discussion. Mr. Stern.
I was stopped and asked a question today by a longtime resident, Vern Martinson. I think most of you know him. He asked me if I had a response to or any thoughts to the article that appeared in today's Sun, resulting from the conference earlier this week on homelessness. And he asked me if there were any safe parks or other facilities in and around Poulsbo for the homeless that would provide for people either in cars or otherwise to have a relatively safe environment for any duration. And I said, to the best of my knowledge, there are no such facilities in the entire North End. And so he was very encouraging of me to bring it up and ask the council to do all it can do to suggest or facilitate that type of facility for the homeless. So I'm putting that on the table and sharing that from Vern Martinson.
Mr. Stern, Councilmember Barry Mare attended the all-day workshop yesterday on that very issue called No Place to Lay Their Heads. And what's being passed around now are guidelines for safe park programs. You're correct. There is nothing in the North End currently. There is a safe park program in place down at the county fairgrounds area. So Ms. Barry Mare will have a report on that.
That's
so
great.
Very timely that he asked you that question.
Thank you.
Ms. Lord.
I'll just add on to that. There is an ad hoc group that's a number of service agencies such as Fishline and a number of churches that I've been joining up with, and that's one of the topics of discussion. I know Dale Rudolph, your church has provided a meal once a week, or once a month, I should say.
We're just going to twice a month.
Twice a month, and my church is doing it once a week. So there's meals in place, and this is sort of a spin-off from this group, and we're meeting trying to come up with solutions. So I'm sure this would take a concerted effort to try to find a parking lot somewhere to be able to facilitate something like this.
Well, there's a lot more involved than just providing a parking lot.
Right.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
no, you have to have security for them as well as,
Yeah, and case management and all
Case
those things like that.
management.
But
That's right.
Ms. Barry Mare will give us a report
Okay.
on that. Thank
Right.
you. Yes, Ms. Erickson.
Just to chime in, I was at the Fishline board meeting. I can't remember if that was last Monday or the Monday before. Things have been a little busy lately. But the requests for Thanksgiving food baskets last year were about 250, and they're now up to over 400 this year. And so to everyone, think about Fishline and support it in any way that you can, because there's a lot of people in need in the community right now. So that's it.
Ms. Barry Mare.
As the mayor mentioned, I did attend this all-day seminar yesterday. It was really interesting. It was a very wide-reaching group of people. There were homeless people there. There were people who were organized service organizations that serve underage homeless, all ages. There were people advocating for the safe park. It was a really dynamic discussion. There were a lot of interesting ideas thrown out and interesting perspectives, and even just citizens who are actually doing things in their own home. People are taking people into their own home, and we had our police chief there, as well as representatives from 3 different organizations. And I do think that one of the questions was what can we do immediately, because one of the problems is that we have such a huge increase in homelessness. And people of all different walks of life. So many people are really surprised to find themselves in that position and really unprepared, don't even know where to go. Certainly, as Becky said, Fishline does offer some services.
Rental assistance.
If people donate to Fishline, they can even give things like emergency vouchers for hotels, so that people don't have to stay in their cars. But the idea of the Safe Park is a program that the county has been trying for the last year. They have some codes that they have written that I think that we might want to discuss. It really is a partnership between looking at our city codes as to how we could accommodate this, in a way that works for everybody. But it needs partnerships between. Generally, it's the faith-based communities. You need to have parking facilities. You need to have bathroom facilities. The program the county has been running has been. You have to have the staff support to get the caseworkers. Because all these people are They run background checks. They're not going to have a family shelter where they allow, sex offenders or convicted, people that are convicted of crime. So there's a whole organization that goes behind it, and but I do think that it's something that we may want to look at sooner rather than later. I made the suggestion at the meeting. Because so many different organizations were saying it's so hard to work across multiple organizations. Every jurisdiction has a different rule. And they said, can't you guys coordinate and give us some guidelines so that we don't have to reinvent ourselves when we go from the city to the county to the next city. So I do think that I suggested that maybe that discussion might be able to happen with the planning directors through KRCC, because then you have all the people that are dealing with regulations. But I do wonder if we might want to have a committee review this program, and I don't know if it would be community services, if it would be
Where's
public
that fall?
works. I'm not quite sure where it should go, but I do think that the concept of the safe park, which is really an immediate need that we might be able to try and deal with sooner rather than later. We table this until February.
It's too
So
late. We need it now.
It's too late.
We need it
I
now.
think that we would want to address it sooner rather than later. I did have a conversation with Ray, the director at Fishline, and they are, we're planning to have a discussion after the first of the year, because of course they're really inundated
Oh,
with
they are.
requests around the holiday season. But I do think that as a council, we might want to take that first step and discuss it, look at our regulations. I have copies of the county regulations that I could give to
Okay.
our planning director. Maybe the regulatory issues goes through Public Works. And maybe Community Services
right.
talks about,
Great.
Right, that
maybe
would be
tries
great.
to schedule a meeting sooner rather than later with the director of Fishline, and reach out to some of the faith-based organizations. That would be my suggestion, if the council concurs, that we at least start that process there.
I agree totally. As chair right now of Community Services,
Good.
we can tackle that at our next meeting, just as a beginning to get going on it, so we can work on it in
It-
December too.
Sooner rather than later. The
Yeah.
need is, what's happening is that people's unemployment benefits are running out. And so the Fishline has really been hit with requests for emergency rental vouchers, hotel space, utility help. When people think about Fishline, they think about giving food, but they need cash. because
Actually,
some-
they can use cash even more than food.
Yeah, they
because
need
get
cash because then
more
they
for
can
it.
direct the aid where it's necessary, and it's really starting to hit in the last couple of months, so anything they can do to help.
And one of the important things that one of the homeless people mentioned is that they need money for gas. You know, when they're
Yes.
living out of their cars and it's freezing cold, they're using the engines in the heating system to keep themselves warm at night. And there are more and more people, unfortunately, living out of their cars. They turned away, Kitsap Community Services turned away, I believe, 130 families from housing that they were not able to accommodate this year, and there are 1,500 people
Right.
on the waiting list at the Bremerton Housing Authority.
Right.
So that's a lot.
Chief, do you have anything to add from your perspective from yesterday's workshop?
No, just to echo what Linda was saying, it was real eye-opening for me as well, being relatively new to the area, but just, it's not isolated just to Poulsbo or just Kitsap County, so it was refreshing. I think Linda hit it on the head. I mean, what I look for my staff and my people is just to make sure when we come across or when we're directed to assist with the need that we know where to refer them to or to give them information for. So I know Chief Simpson from the Sheriff's Department, we talked about Tent City and the concept and all that, and I think there's a dire need for it, and there's enough desire of people wanting to help to make things happen that law enforcement sometimes gets in that awkward position with these types of activities, like where are they at, what's going on, what's the makeup of the people, but the reality is our role is to assist along with any of the other organizations to make people's needs be accommodated and all that. So we're not looking from an enforcement perspective, we're looking at from how can we assist and make sure that they're in a safe environment until they work through these difficult times. So it was very, very eye-opening. It was very good.
Thank you for attending as well. Thank you, Ms. Barrymore. Mr.
Yeah.
McGinty?
I have nothing.
Oh,
Go
Mr.
ahead. I'm good.
I'd just like to add a couple more comments from the training session that I went to, and that is that, again, as Linda said, the Department of Emergency Management pilot project, they require everybody be a client of KCR. So you're getting screened people. These are also temporary, and they have a renewable or not, they have a renewable permit process, so that that's part of the temporary nature. But I think the most important thing for us, besides the coordination of the regulations, is the public awareness, because, I think, all we know about for the most part is tent city in Seattle, whatever that is, because we hear about it when they make a move, or when it's time for them to move. And I think a lot of people are wondering, who are these people? What are they doing in my neighborhood? And in the training sessions, we were talking about the security issue was the campers' security, not the community security. Again, these are mostly, if not exclusively, families that are in, that have a caseworker assigned to them. They're not transients. They're not, the ever-dreaded bum on the street at all. And so if people knew what it was, I think, I just would caution that we just take a light touch in terms of what the city actually can do, because it's going to come from most likely faith-based community and volunteers, and we have no control over them other than just to make them aware what the opportunities are. And there's a lot going on, as Connie knows, as you're becoming aware now, that's already going on out there. And also for the organizations that may be interested, that quite a lot of the support can come from these other agencies, that it's not saying you're also going to end up sponsoring these people and supporting them and all of that. I mean, that's completely up to you, but the commitment really of an organization is just to allow these, and by the way, what I heard was that they have to be out of there by 6:30 in the morning. So it doesn't necessarily even conflict with, say, for example, Kitsap Transit using your lot, or your own parishioners using your lot, because, who the heck goes to church at 6:30 in the morning?
Thank you. Mr. Stern?
I had just one comment, and then I have a question before we leave this topic. I was looking coincidentally at a history book of Seattle today, photographs, and one of them was taken in the 1930s, Hooverville, in the south of downtown area that's now where the ports are. And it was just a mass of shanties made out of tin and wood and whatever material they could get. And it suddenly strikes me that the modern Hooverville is actually in a car, and it's almost invisible to us. And they come together and then drive off and then come together, as opposed to one area of apparent slum. And I think we need to wake up that our automobile age has changed the character of that. And then my question is, both Catherine and I had the privilege of attending in August the first homeless lunch at the Salvation Army. And the second one is going to be this Friday, where they provide lunch and you sit with various homeless people. And then as soon as the lunch is over, the electeds that are in the room congregate in the other portion of the Salvation Army building to brainstorm. And I couldn't but help encourage those of you who could possibly squeeze the time on Friday. Catherine, is there anything you want to add?
One of the outcomes from that first luncheon that we attended was the knowledge that sometimes law enforcement comes down in a less than desirable way on some of these people, whether it's for, whatever reason it's for, and it was just, that was something that we could do something about right away, and I discussed this with the chief. We haven't had that problem up here, but, because a person is homeless doesn't mean that they're a criminal, and so they don't need to be treated that way, and their belongings are their belongings, and the homeless people were encouraged to take badge numbers and names, if they could, of officers that treated them with less than the respect that they should be due. And there were some outcomes that could be immediately implemented from last time. I would encourage any of you that can make it on Friday to go down there.
I was planning on going to that one.
And then
I'm already registered.
there's also a challenge that I believe the Salvation Army and Richard Lemieux put out, which was Friday night. If you would care to put yourself in somebody else's shoes to actually go and spend the night in your car Friday night, and that doesn't mean go and spend the night in your car in your driveway and go in and use your bathroom, but actually spend the night in your car with no heat, with no water, with no services, as a show of empathy and awareness of what other people are going through. And as Ms. Barry Murray said, these people, a lot of them are in this situation. There's a lot of reasons, but a lot of them are just one paycheck away from being there, or one paycheck after being there. It could happen to almost anyone. So I appreciate council's awareness and willingness to work on this issue. We may not solve it here in Poulsbo, but we can be part of the solution. So thank you.